if you're looking for an everyday loaf that is not difficult to make, this is the one. Hi everyone, let's make an incredibly easy, no-knead sourdough bread. I love all the fancy fixins for a grand and elaborate sourdough loaf, but this is not that loaf. Today we're going to make a delicious bread without a Dutch oven, a stand mixer, a Bannatyne, or an autolyse. Anytime in the morning is when I usually begin my bread. It ranges from about 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. and it always turns out, so do not fret too much about timing. I add 400 grams of bread flour and 100 grams of whole wheat flour to my bowl. You can definitely play around with the percentages you want to use of each flour depending on how you like the taste. I personally like this 4-to-1 ratio of bread flour to whole wheat flour. Straight into this flour, I will add about 2 teaspoons of salt and about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I am much more relaxed about percentages and measurements in this bread because this recipe is very forgiving. I mix all of this together and then I slowly mix in about 1.25 cups to 1.5 cups of water. This is a very slow process because every time that I add water, I will mix it in completely to the flour until it is fully incorporated before I add some more water. When I first started baking sourdough, I was very confused by the entire process, but this ultra easy loaf made it realistic for me to keep baking bread. This loaf will take about 24 hours-ish to make, but only a couple minutes of actually working the dough. The rest of the time is simply the fermentation, letting the dough grow and becoming strong. This long time frame gives your dough time to create a healthy structure, which leads to a perfect, chewy crumb and deep flavor. You only need 4 ingredients, which are bread flour, whole wheat flour, olive oil, and salt. These, plus an active starter in water, are going to give you a wonderful sourdough bread. Once all the water is mixed in and it is completely hydrated, it is time to add the extras. I want to add sesame seeds, so I'm going to go ahead and add a couple teaspoons of them. I then bring over my sourdough starter and add roughly 2 tablespoons into the bowl. Again, I just feel it out and guess more so than measure anything anymore because this bread will turn out great no matter what. So I like to not have to think about measurements as much. I work the dough with my hands until it is all mixed together. Sometimes I add the starter earlier before the water, sometimes I forget the extras like sesame seeds. That is the beauty of this recipe, is that it is so flexible and so forgiving that you can pretty much do whatever works best for you. When all the dry flour has been incorporated into the dough, I cover the dough and let it rest for an hour or 2. I then go back to my dough and fold it so that it begins to come together and smooth out. I just work it into a dough ball as it begins to create elasticity and then leave it alone for another couple of hours. For the rest of the afternoon or evening, I fold the dough a few times every couple of hours. This recipe is so flexible, it's really just whatever timing works best. I do love to see how the dough gains strength and begins to stretch when you start working it and then tightens down as you stop working it. Sometime in the evening, I line my loaf pan with parchment paper and fold the dough into a loaf. This is really not a complicated process. I am simply moving and tucking the sides of the dough under itself, and I then place the dough into the loaf pan and cover it with tin foil to prevent it from drying out. I leave the bread out overnight for its last proof. In the morning, I can see that the bread has proofed beautifully and is ready to bake. I sprinkle the top with some more sesame seeds, but you can sprinkle or not sprinkle anything you would like. Sometimes I forget to sprinkle the sesame seeds. Unlike when using the Dutch oven, there is nothing that has to heat up in the oven for an hour before you bake. Simply place the dough into the 400-degree oven with its tinfoil hat still on. This prevents your bread from getting burnt because of prolonged exposure. I leave the tinfoil hat on for about 25 minutes-ish. This is very helpful in preventing the crust from hardening too early so that the loaf can grow more. When the 25 minutes are done, remove the tinfoil and bake for another 30 to 35 minutes. I then remove the bread and see how awesome and delicious it looks. You can always bake it for longer if you'd like it to be darker. I let my bread cool for a little while and then slice in and enjoy fantastically awesome sandwich or toast bread. I hope you can see how easy this loaf was to make. If you are new to sourdough, I would definitely recommend starting with a bread like this to get your feet under you. If you try this loaf, let me know how it goes for you, and always remember you can leave any questions in the comments and I will respond to you as soon as I can.